I'm so happy to be part of Mentor Mash. We've been talking about this for a while, so it's great to be here and to be in fruition. I'll share my story with you. I started in 2010, so it feels like ancient history. What we were doing then, we are not doing now. So don't ever worry about having a starting point in your career. I was coming out of post-production and transitioning into more on the digital entertainment tech side. And the way that happened for me was I was a post-production editor, compositor, removing backgrounds, fixing hair, you name it, industrials. I did the full gamut. I have a fine art background. So it was always exciting for me to be part of like digital storytelling, even though people didn't always know what that meant. And I was looking for my next editing freelance gig. This is about 2009-ish. But then there's this little thing that happened to our economy called a recession. The housing market fell out. And, I wasn't a homeowner. I was fresh out of grad school. So I thought, why does this matter to me until the writer strike in LA, and then all the freelance jobs that I had coveted and built relationships just disappeared overnight. And I found myself just kind of trying in a laid off kind of situation, like, what am I going to do next? I started applying to jobs, any kind of jobs really, to kind of just keep myself out there, make more connections. I came across a job that I thought was a night editor job, and it was on Craigslist. It happened to be for abc.com and content distribution at that time. So if any of you are familiar with what we call a CMS, content management system, and if any of you watch content online, whether that's Hulu, Netflix, ABC, anywhere, Disney, that is actually published by someone that is going to load that content and all the assets and all the titles and the director's names. That's exactly what I did. And then also QA'd it, to make sure that it was correct and able for users' consumption or for our consumers' consumption. So I did that, kind of fell into it, didn't really have like an inkling that I was going to stay there. I started asking questions. The system was very hard, very complicated to use for simple tasks. And like clockwork, it would crash periodically in the night. So if you did not save your text to either a notepad or an Excel spreadsheet, you would lose it and start all over again, which is always fun when you're learning a new task, to have that happen to you. So I did that, and I started asking questions like, why is this like this? What happened? Like, we're a billion-dollar company. What's going on here? How come I'm using something that looks like my cousin and my friend made together, maybe in college? I asked a lot of questions. It probably got me into trouble, but my supervisor at the time said, you sound like a product person. You should go into product since you like to ask a lot of questions. I was like, I looked at a product role. I saw it. It was such a heavy like analyst. I was like, I don't want to be an analyst. I want to like create things. But as fate intervened, HR, some great women in HR reached out to me, sold me on the posting, and it was a project specialist for abcfamily.com working on the website. This is when we think of like Web 2.0. I went for it, kind of fell into it. One thing that was really like kind of interesting to me, and we were dealing with like a tween kind of demographic, is that no one was really reading all the comments. There were so many people that would go through our process, they would authenticate, they would watch this ad, and then it would just be dead. It would fall flat for them. And they come back and they recycle and refresh. And we were just having just some kind of ad issues at that time on the platform. This was common, this is like 2011. I would say probably 2011, 2012. And I just was like, wow, like these people are trying to get their like best, like, Pretty Little Liars content. And they're just trying to see who A is. And they're trying to like, these like young people are trying to really like be invested into the series, and we're not able to facilitate that for them. So in that short time, I really started to grow. I was always passionate about the consumer experience and really just kind of trying to understand the technology. At that time, everybody was jumping onto Agile. We went through several weeks of training, had to get a cert. And then shortly after there, I got recruited by Fox.com. Now I thought, I'm too new in this industry. There's no way, like, why are they reaching out to me? But they did. And by this point, I'm 6 months into my new product job. So I'm just like, there's no way. They're just talking to me because they just, I ran into someone networking, was like, yeah, that's it. They're not going to really like go forward with this. Is a product manager and I'm a product specialist. So that's just like years down the road. It's not happening for me. Anyway, I started talking, and in that short 6 months, I had picked up on so many like pain points within my organization that even when I was talking to this new company, I was like, great, really like what I'm doing, but how do you handle QA? How do you handle your release management? What is your stakeholder sign-off process? How do you guys facilitate requirements? Is it in a brainstorm? Is it one-to-one? Like, so I was asking all these really, really like, pivotal and like intriguing questions because I was understanding the pain point that I currently was in. Never talked bad about my current employer, never mentioned anything, but just really kind of focused on what were my objectives and what was I trying to do and grow in my career. Beknownst to me, they offered me the job. I had been product 7 months, and now I moved to a PM. And now I'm working on Fox.com. And this is back in the wild, wild west of streaming. There was the beginning of the apps coming up. Juliana's laughing because she knows what it was like. You felt like you were out there like doing open heart surgery with a developer and a designer. And you guys are like, you're calling out requirements like, please, let's just get this done. I need to get this deadline. Many late nights. But it was very like, challenging for me, and it grew my career because right when I started, the guy that was training me said, very endearingly said, hey, I've been here so many years and it's a great company and blah, blah, blah. He's like, by the way, I just gave my notice. So you're going to inherit all of my show sites. So here I was thinking like, I'm imposter syndrome. Like they're going to find out I was only doing that other job for 6 months. Someone's going to call the police. I don't know. In my head, I was like,
somebody's going to call the police.
Yeah, HR police is going to come down and give me that soft pat, like, enough here, ma'am. Like, we looked at your credentials. We know that you're a fine art person. Like, I really, really, like, honestly, my imagination, it runs wild. So I was always looking over my shoulder. I would get to the office at 8 a.m. I would just be like, one day they're going to ask me to leave, but at least I know I was early. Like they weren't going to get me on that part, So I really was like, oh my gosh, like, I went from owning like 10 show sites to 40 in the blink. And that senior product manager left. And I was told to, hey, figure it out. So I do get a lot of inbox and DMs about like how to make the transition and what courses I took and who held my hand or what great advice I got. I didn't get a lot. I got like, you better figure this out. I came in early. I made friends with a lot of people. I apologize for my shortcomings, but when I understood something, I repeated it back to people. So I would be like, oh, so this is built on a different tech stack. Interesting. So these are all different tech stacks. Oh, wow. Like this is going to be great to manage and organize. So that was like where I kind of got started and then just started to work systematically down a list and then, kept kind of building those strong relationships with people that were friendly, people that didn't mind me asking questions, asking developers in their spare time. Besides, let's talking about like the Star Wars trilogy. What do you think about moving to Drupal? So you gotta, product is a relationship, it's communication, it's a lot of listening. It is very technical, but all of those skills are layered into one. Fox was crazy. Fox was like the wild, wild west at that time. I mean, you never know what you're gonna get. I ended up focusing on sponsored partnerships. So if you think of ad sales at this time, this is 2012, 13, big shows are launching. And then they have these digital components of advertisement. So they're selling on air time, and then what will be kind of what will happen on the website, or what will happen for the consumer when that consumer types in fox.com and the show. What is that real experience? And then how can we make it viral? How can we make it trendy? How can we incentivize consumers coming back to the platform and then turning around and gearing them to watch on air, because on air just sold that much more from a digital transaction than versus a digital revenue buy at that time. So I was heavy in that space. How do you stand something up in 6 weeks? An ad salesperson in New York is promised dragons and leprechauns greet the people when they come to the site. And I know that we can't do that, but I have to figure it out. Those are the kind of challenges that I edit. I mean, it was sometimes you would read like the RFP, or like you would read the buy and be like, did you guys sell, like, do you know we can't do this, right? And they'd be like, oh, it's fine. Just make sure we get the pixels on there, get the impressions, and just go. And so I started to build a catalog, but I also started to build a rapport with people that I was in the trenches with. Now that this time is doing a lot of offsite development. So this is when I really started to get into working with teams that were in Portugal or in Malaysia, and you got to adjust for time zone, even though they're on West Coast time. I started to get those better conversations at night. I started to kind of connect the dots. How could we build this better? How could we avoid this next time? Or what was wrong with the code? Or did I miss something in the requirements? I could ask those questions and it not be as intimidating, and it could be more of us working together and building a partnership, and that I had their back, and that I was gonna, if something wasn't right, okay, I understand, I own this as a product issue. I'm gonna communicate this out. I'm gonna get ahead of this. And so that's what Fox taught me. And and you make all these like great connections with people that are all just like passionate about either entertainment or the content, or really just kind of passionate about like how that delivery of that process of how consumers are how they're watching our shows online, and what they're saying on Twitter, and then what are they doing afterwards, and what's the UGC, or the user generated content that they create afterwards, and then and how, looking at all these fans like Tumblr sites. So I'm dating myself now, and you never live till you have to build out a custom Tumblr that looks like a fan made it, but you made it. So it's it's always interesting, the type of problem solving I would be in entertainment. And no one asked me to leave, so I was constantly like, after that first year, I was like, whoa, but again, it was always kind of a cycle of something was ever changing. Went through 3 different redesigns, good hex values on building out sites, and then how do you train content producers, and how do you actually articulate this to an executive team, and then how do you get sales to stop selling dragons and leprechauns when we know we can't do that? Please stop giving me an ulcer. So it was very it was definitely, it wasn't an easy walk. I will never say product is an easy walk. So those of you that are trying to get in this, I don't ever feel like it's going to be like an easy kind of coasting situation. Maybe later in your years, I don't know, maybe you go work for like the government or insurance, I don't know, but those might be a little bit less stressful. But entertainment, because the viewing practices were changing so much. And so you have like the start of Hulu, you have Netflix pivoting, and everybody's talking about streaming and what that is and how people watch. The networks saw this. It's not like we were, out to lunch, but, being able to pivot in these really, really like these huge kind of tech stacks is not something that we can do overnight. And if they're not built that way, and they're not in a startup environment where they can just say, oh, let's build this code base that costs millions of dollars to launch, and then now let's go do this. So it was definitely like educational in that process. And that's when I really started to kind of really be like, I'm here, I'm in product. I know what, I know what I'm doing, or I think I do, and why I'm doing it, and really kind of understanding like how I get work done. And then how do I work with project managers? How do I work with designers? How do I work with PR? How do I work with marketing? How do I work with these content producers that I was once like a blink ago? And now I'm time teaching them and building them better tools, internally, that can help them do their jobs faster and better. So that took me through Fox. Here in LA, and I think anywhere when you kind of work with a group of people and you start to build a reputation, people start to know you. So my VP at Fox.com left, become the chief digital officer of a company called Beachbody. It was a fitness, wellness, herbal supplement kind of place. And he started to cherry pick people to take and like, hey, we're going to go build streaming on a fitness platform. And I got the call, and I had never in my career, like, oh my gosh, I was all giddy. Like, they like me. I know what I'm doing. Okay. HR police, you didn't get me this time. Like, I was like, okay. And I got the call like, hey, would I want to come do this? And I thought like, wow, this would be completely different. I did think like, how would this change my career? What if I didn't like it? It's a completely different field. It's a startup kind of name, going from Fox and ABC to now Beachbody. Would there be question marks? Would people be scratching their head? But it was just like an opportunity for me to really kind of grow my career and to actually have like ownership of a platform instead of working project-based. So that I'm going to own, let's say, desktop, or I'm going to kind of own that experience end to end, and it's going to be just a larger scale and scope. So I took the bait and went to Beachbody and worked with a bunch of entertainment people that were doing fitness. And now we didn't have to worry about on air, but now we had all this like huge PR and marketing campaigns. And then, we're really kind of driving it from a user perspective, but then also from a sales component, like how much are we doing from a conversion for a subscription? And then what is it like to launch a native app development? So Beachbody took me through really kind of challenging me on what kind of platforms I'm going to build. And then also to get into native app development, which I had never done. And then also, what is it like to be a people manager? I do get a lot of also in my inbox, like, I want to be a people manager. And the first question I ask is why? Are you sure? Because it's different. And your output and your product is going to be different. No, I do love being a leader, and especially guiding and developing talent, and especially new talent. I think what is the most thing to remember as a people leader and product, depending on how you're org, you may still have responsibilities. I still owned a platform at that time, but I started to grow a team. So then you have to make that separation of when now am I fully, devoted to the execution, administration, the strategy side of the product org, or am I still having ownership in a particular vertical or a typical end-to-end kind of an end-to-end initiative versus me kind of delegating that or hiring a senior PM or a PM to kind of fill that need on my team. So it was interesting to me. I had, like a lot of people, I think you can do well in product, and then you kind of just either go up the ladder and you make that trade-off of, do you want to stay as an IC, an individual contributor, or do you want to go into leadership? And they don't give you any training for that, by the way. So those that also ask that question, you kind of got to figure it out yourself. And, I had lack of probably leadership. I kind of just got work and got task and got busy, or kept writing or continue to launch. So what type of leader did I want to be, and what type of conversations, how did I want to run my team? So I had to go through all of that exploratory process. And after 3.5 years and doing some fun stuff, and it was a really fun opportunity. It really gave me an opportunity to go into product leadership. I got the call from Disney to come back and to lead a team at Movies Anywhere, to be head of product for there, and to really kind of focus on growth and engagement. And so I went to Disney. It was my second, I was called a boomerang second time around at Disney. Very different this time, smaller team, run like a startup, interesting business proposition value. Lots of challenges from an executive standpoint as far as how we were orged and how, we drove engagement because we weren't a subscription. We just focused on users that wanted to collect and then sync on our platform. So how do you really get into this mindset when everybody has a streaming platform now? So now, before we went from, 2 to, let's say, 10 streaming platforms for everything that you can imagine. And it was really interesting. The largest team that I kind of took over. And how do you come into a situation when they haven't had product leadership or haven't had a full product development life cycle process, and product is kind of being run like a PMO or project management standpoint? And then how do you motivate people that have been in careers and kind of just maybe stayed stagnant, and how do you give them that hope and vitality and of the product? So Movies Anywhere was a great kind of run for me. I did want to take a break from entertainment. I think at the end of, coming out of or we're still in the pandemic, or I think we are, but I don't know. I just know sometimes I wear a mask, sometimes I don't. That's what I know right now. But coming
Accurate.
out of, is that fair? That's how
That
I
is
get.
completely accurate.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah.
please go on.
So I then thought about, like, what is next for me? What have I not done? And I would say big tech was probably still like a question mark, like, do I have what it takes? Because, in entertainment, they definitely have that division. Like, like, we know what you do, but you are not us, and so there's always like this weird, like, like, they have requirements, like, how different can it be? Like, like, we've got KPIs too. Okay, Netflix, like, I have a dashboard, but it is different. 6 months into my new role. But yeah, I wanted to kind of have that. And I wanted to be at a culture that really embraced, product-led growth, that was also going through their own transformation or pivot, and a culture that people really spoke highly about, and not just for the name, but also internally, and seeing that people had a track record and that they stayed past, the vesting stock cycle, and really invested back into the company. And so Adobe was my choice, and hands down, out of all the companies I was talking to at the time, it just really was a great match, and going through that process, and really kind of where I could see myself, and then what does it mean to solely focus on growth at this standpoint in my career, and what does that look like differently? So yes, I've been at Adobe since February 22nd of this year, and I am a director of growth for their product-led growth team on Adobe Express, which is a free product for those of you that are out there that have any type of creative needs. It's not a plug, but I do. I do look at the numbers.
Hey, it's not a paid plug. The actual invite for this event was made with Adobe Express, if that makes you feel
Hey,
warm and fuzzy, right? There's your warm
hey,
and fuzzy.
I like that. I like that packaging and bookending. Yes, but Adobe Express, great product. And then also to expose Adobe to people that are not familiar. There's whole new generations that don't have this. I remember when the box set came out, and you were trying to get it, or trying to get a copy or something, so that you could contribute into Premiere or Photoshop or Illustrator or InDesign. And there's a whole new generation, whole different focus, and the way users are creative now, that I think Adobe can get in there and continue to drive great creativity and excellence for everyone, no matter what their skill set is. So I hope that does it.
Oh, are you kidding? That does a whole lot. Hang on one second here. The
I want to give you
questions.
guys enough information, so we're not just sitting here looking at each other on Zoom. But yeah.
No, the questions are like rolling in like crazy.
Yeah.
And I want to throw this out there for
Okay.
the people that are asking about imposter syndrome, because you encapsulated what that feels like hilariously, thinking that the police were going to come get you and find out that you really didn't know what you were supposed to know to be there. So, Ebony, and some others. I'm going to actually try to put your question together. So it's partially, what about you do you think people were gravitating toward and giving you these opportunities at the times when you didn't totally really believe in yourself.
So I agree.
And
Oh, sorry.
yeah, oh no, no worries. And to that end, did you feel pressure as a fine arts person to go get some other more techie like credentials or anything like that? So play with those two for a moment, and what do you think?
I think these are great questions because it's not stuff that I get to think about all the time. But I do remember at the time that people kept saying, no, you are this, you're a product person. And I didn't even know what product actually did. I thought it was an extension of data and analytics. And it is in some regards, it definitely is. But I just thought it was like someone who was adjacent to finance or accounting. And I wasn't that person. So I think sometimes people can see things in you that you do not see or you have not stepped into yet. And people were constantly saying like, oh, I see you because you asked this question. And I was just like, yeah, but don't you want to know what happened to the people that signed in and didn't come back to the platform? Like, isn't that like, so I definitely thought differently about the products I was building. And then I always kind of went back to like, what would my mom do? She's a senior. She's not the most tech savvy person, but she likes to watch content. Why can't she participate in this platform? And then what would my friends do that work in finance and they're not sitting there updating and are not getting every single iOS, device that comes out? So what would they do? And so that really kind of grounded me that no matter what, I'm still building products for someone else. I'm not really building this for myself. And sometimes I think people were attracted to me because I just spoke like oh, I'm going to remove all of kind of the language behind this. I would be in a QA and someone might say, oh, well, this release ended because the branch wasn't committed correctly. And I was like, so that person didn't close their work off? Is that what you're saying? And then, someone might laugh, but I was serious because I needed to understand it. But then I also needed to be able to give that information to the people above me that weren't going to sit here and listen and read JIRA tickets. And I had to be able to drill this down for people that have short attention spans that need to make a decision based on the information that they had. And I would be thinking, well, what's the quickest way to get to A to B? And it's not always a straight line. So if I can cut out some of this language kind of barrier, and then I'm empowered, and then I can also then confidently give that message. So that was one of the things that I think people saw in me. Even when I was a PM, people would come to me and be like, hey, I haven't heard back on this ticket. Can you talk to design? And for the longest, I was like, why are they asking me? Are they okay? Like, do they know that I don't do that? But I would just like put my hands down. I would just go and like, I don't know. I was on Skype at the time, like, I'm just gonna Skype her like you did, but I would get an answer. So I'd be like, hey, okay, great. And then I started to kind of lean into that. And, without my humor aside, like, okay, what's really happening? Like, why couldn't you answer this person? And they're like, oh, well, that person always Skypes me at 7 p.m. at night and I'm off at that point. And I'm like, okay, so it's a time condition, good, duly noted. Okay, so I'm just constantly connecting information. And I think as a Black woman and as a person of color, however you want to slice it, I'm in a place where I have to be resourceful. I did not have my friends that went to MIT. I did not have people that went to SC that were computer science that I could text them and figure it out. I was in forums by myself. I was in Reddit trying to read, because remember I told you I thought they were going to ask me to leave one day. So I was constantly like, every single time I learned something, oh, that's what that means. Okay, got it. Now I understand. And then I'm committing it to memory. And then I would share it with somebody because I would be like, I know that they don't know, but I'm just going to share it with you. I'm going to put it in a nice email, short and sweet, concise and to the point, and get it out. And I started to build relationships based on that. And I forgot the second part of your question. I think you said, or remind me again.
The second part of the question was, being a fine arts person,
Yeah.
did you feel pressure to go get any more credentials, degrees, get more tech certs or anything like that?
Yes, I did. So I wasn't into certs. I did not, besides going to Agile, which my company, made was mandatory training. What I did do was I had to go and make friends with the developers. I know, right? Remove that third wall. Like we're not just gonna, talk in emails or on, Slack. So I had to go down there and, really sit with someone and understand what were their challenges, why they hated my requirements writing, why they liked this over that. And sometimes that's hard. That's hard when you're just like trying to survive and trying to keep your head above the water and figure things out. And, I'm not going to say it's about all engineers, but some of them not necessarily the most social butterflies.
Wait a
So,
minute. Hold up. We stopping right here.
oh,
Hated your requirements writing? So I need you to do my people, my community, my tribe is solid right
yes,
now.
yes.
How did you deal with things that were hard or seemed mean, or people, whether or not the people were justified just trying to do their jobs, or people that just were rooting against you? That sounds really hard.
Yes, it was. But
How'd you rise above the struggle? Come on.
um to be honest, I'm a very tenacious person. And early on, I was told that I did not belong and that I did not look like a product manager. And that I did not think like a product manager, and that someone who was more senior with me was surprised that I got the job. And I remember thinking like, oh my God, they just played you to your face. Now, see, back in that day, they would just tell you things to your face. Now, because of the whole, discrimination or more prevalent cases, they don't say it to your face, or they may not say it that directly. But yeah, they told me that like I wasn't gonna make it. So I'm the kind of person, wholeheartedly, if you tell me no, I'm gonna come back. And I hope I hope you're sure about that no, because all no is two little words, two little letters. Okay. So I kind of just took that and swallowed it. But then I started to think like, okay, well, what makes this person an expert? Why does their opinion matter? What is it that they do differently? So then I started to just do like informal polls, like, hey, do you want me to write this way? Like talking to the developers. Hey, how can I be more successful? How can I get to a closer understanding? And sometimes you just have to be quiet and let people talk about themselves. And I started to realize it wasn't necessarily my technical shortcoming. It was either my personality, it was my joyfulness, it was my ambition that made people feel uncomfortable. Because if I think about the people that I was surrounded by, they all moved alike, they all thanked alike, they all dressed alike. I mean, how much, Panagonia, fleece sweaters can I see, or, hoodies can I see in one day? But I did not represent that way. And that's fine. And I need to be able to, just like I have a broad consumer base, I need to be able to think differently. And companies do a disadvantage by kind of hiring the same person over and over again. So I just, I was like, I mean, I definitely had some hard days. You haven't lived until you cried in your car in an entertainment lot because you can't cry in the bathroom because there's too many people crying in the bathroom. But, I've gone through all of that. I can laugh about it today, but it was not funny when it happened. But it was like a real moment. It was a real moment that someone told me like, hey, like you are not this person. And I would just think, okay, that's their opinion. They're entitled to their opinion, but I know that I am here for a reason. These doors keep opening up to me, and I haven't got fired. So I don't want to use that as a hero metric, but I'm saying, and I keep launching stuff that people come back to the site for. So you have to kind of have those wins. You also have to have a community. I started meeting people in entertainment, even though they weren't necessarily on the tech side. They were always so fascinated to see a woman or a Black woman in this role, and that I could talk about it and I could take away some of the intimidation by not necessarily talking to them to death in technical requirements when I just met them.
Hey, I'm going to add our fearless founder, Jae Taylor, to the spotlight. He's so lovingly raised his hand. Just jump on in, Jack. I mean, he raised his hand like this ain't his thing.
I know.
Look, I'm being respectful. You guys were on a roll, so I didn't want to mess that
Yeah.
up.
Well,
I was
I was gonna say, Jay, you must have so much to say about the things that she is embodied that you echo for this community day in and day out. What what prompted you to? What are you raising your hand on?
Yeah, and that's exactly it, Juliana. So, and I hope everybody's paying attention. I really do, because if you think about Kasha's story, so much of it is so people centric, like building relationships with people and asking them. Like, I love what you were saying about talking with developers, right? Like, how do you know if your requirements are good? Just ask them. They'll tell you what works and what doesn't work. Because a lot of times I work with people in the community and they're looking for a template. Like, they're
Yeah.
like, Jay, tell me the right answer.
Mhm.
And I'm like, it depends on the company that you're at, right? Like, people are different. But one of the reason I rose my hand was because I loved how you were talking about the struggle of being in product. So 90+% of people in Mentor Mesh are part of underrepresented groups.
Mm.
And I tell people it's probably 3/4 women and everyone else is part of some minority group, most of us. Once you get that job, it's not over.
No, gosh, no.
The struggle is not over.
It's never ending and it's hard. I don't know if people say that, you can see the people on LinkedIn and see all the great launches, but it is hard. It is hard. But it's
It's got to
also
be a little easier now that you like.
now I
No,
have to now
different tools.
I have different challenges now. So it's like when you move, when you learn the rhythm, then they change the tempo. Like I'm just like, oh my gosh, the beat just changed. Like what happened? Like
Right.
I
Right.
was,
And think about it too. The higher you get,
yes.
the less diverse it becomes even
Yes,
more.
yes,
Right.
it is true. Yes. And I'm not
Good
actually
point.
touching the product in a way where before I was like, wow, I'm gonna like, this button should be this or it should do this after that. Those are not the type of decisions that I make. So when you do start to jump and start to kind of climb that ladder, your challenges are different, the work is completely different, and the mindset is different to support that. But I think some things get easier. I start to, I will question like, well, let me pick my battles. Is this a deal breaker? Is this a P0? Is this a P1 today? And then I'm like, or is this my own ego, where I'm like, okay, now I still have to constantly navigate through situations. There's still sometimes that a little bit of like, does she really know what she's talking about? And so I think sometimes as being a Black woman, and if you only have an example of one particular example or whoever is at the top, and I think we all know who that is, and if you kind of just emulate that, then what are you doing to kind of change what leadership looks like? How is your value system is different if you're just constantly rinsing, repeating, and regurgitating what you've seen someone else do. So if you see people being dickish and you start to embody that behavior, then that's the type of leadership you become. So it's such a very like inclusive, very tight knit kind of network. And then once you're there, you're constantly proving yourself. I feel like one Slack message at a time. Like I'm like, ooh, I burned through that one. That was a good one. And then other times I'm like, I'll just have to give that a thumbs up and then just be done with it. But it is challenging. It still keeps me interested because there's never a dull moment. I don't feel like I'm stagnant in my career. And we're always constantly evolving tech stacks. There's always like new initiatives. There's always going to be migrations or rebuilds. So I never feel like I'm bored.
Kasha, I want to hear from you about interviewing today
Yes.
because we had some people going through some incredibly brutal interviews. We
Okay.
had some folks go through some good ones.
Mm-hmm.
And this question came up, and who was that from there? We'll get you connected with that person.
Okay.
The culture of a company. How did you get a sense for what the culture of Adobe might be like during your interview process, or any interviews that you may have been through? How were you able to like get an idea for whether you would be a fit or not, that sort of thing?
That's a great question. I don't think it comes in the first round. Uh, and I think, for me, the telltale signs I want to ask are, you know, um, do you feel like outside of like when your day ends, is it really done? And you'll start to see how people manage their time. Or do you feel comfortable going on vacations? Is some other question. Or I ask sometimes, like, what makes you stay? What motivates you to continue working on a product? And especially when a product has, let's say, been in the market for a while and you know that they're not necessarily growing or scaling, they haven't had a big kind of influx of new initiatives or features on the platform. So I always wonder, like, well, what are the things that you're working on and what are the things that you're most proud of? And if the person is like, looks away or can't really search or is telling me about like, updates, then I'm just like, wow, like, are they really connected, or are they just, I'm just checking a box? And I often ask, like, if my panel is all men, that I need to have to speak to someone that either looks like me or represents my gender. That's another way. I want to know what it's really like, and not just talking to a diversity and equity and inclusion person. I really want to understand. And then I also want to know what happened to the person in the last role. Did they leave? Was this a new role? How frequent is turnover, or what is their attrition rate is probably a better way of asking it. And then, where can I go from this role? Say successful 2-3 year run, what does my growth look like? And if they can't answer that and they aren't invested, those are kind of the things, like if there's no plan. I had one time I remember there was this big gaming company. They reached out to me and I was like all giddy, like, oh my gosh, like I'm still waiting for people to tell me to leave. And this huge gaming company, and I'm not a gamer, reached out to me. And then they were like, yes, we saw your LinkedIn. And I was like, oh yes, LinkedIn, like, yes, okay, great. LinkedIn is working for me. But and then I was asking them about the role, like, you know, who did I report into? Or what is this role's goal, or what are their objective? And everything was well, we're working on that. So what we wanted to do, what had happened was, and it was just all this like vagueness. And so I was like, wow, these people reached out to me and they didn't have a plan. And they didn't do any due diligence. The job description looked like it was written in 5 minutes. And that to me was enough of a sign that I didn't need to be there, even if they had this name. And then I just realized when I finally did some digging that they had this humongous scandal. They were accused of sexual discrimination. So they were just going through LinkedIn to kind of put fires out, is what I felt like. So these are also the things like that I want to talk to. And I think also in the beginning, talk to, if you, when you're making those rounds, you definitely have to speak to the hiring manager, but can I speak to a peer? I really would love to know what the day-to-day expectations are like. I really love to know what growth looks like at the company. I really like to know, what does the company do to invest in wellness of the employees? Is that a priority? How is PTO handled? If I take off, am I also expected to respond to things? And you'll start to kind of hear these things from people, and whether they come out and say it, you have to just take the time and be invested and show up in the interview, and not in a place that like, I want them to pick me. You want to pick them too. You have to be an active participant in the process. You can't just smile and regurgitate answers. You have to ask thought-provoking questions as well.
Amazing. This is going to be something that we play back again, and again, because it's been really, really, you can't live people's experiences for them. And these are some painful growth periods interviewing for folks in the community. And I thank you for all of those questions that you put out there. And the next thing, I know we're getting close to time. We have a little bit of time. Chanel, and that was Tara actually that asked that great question. This one comes from Chanel. She wanted to know, can you tell us the difference between being a product leader responsible for a team versus how you feel being the product manager who just works on a team? What's the balance?
A product manager, I feel like you are in it. Like you are invested in that product. Like you are listening to those consumers. Your output is your release, is your experimentation, is your hypothesis. It's a number of multiple things. You are running that kind of end-to-end product vision. I am running the vision of the team and the strategy. My output is now the team's output. And I am a type of leader where I'm in a place of service. So my job is to unblock things. My job is to do the things that nobody else wants to do, like go through purchase orders and SOWs, and then also make hiring and development calls, and then continue on with, was this the right direction for our team? So my output is now the team. Of course, I still take great stake into the product and developing and looking at what we are doing from an experimentation. I'm more on the questioning of like, well, why was that your call? But I want my team to be empowered, and I want them to be able to answer that. And I also want them to know their data inside and out. And then I take that information and then I make bigger decisions, or then I kind of feed that up the chain and say, this is the reason why this happened. Here's all the nitty gritty that I have that actually came from the product manager that ran that experiment or that flagged this issue, but here's a happy path. So I work on solutions, quick, making decision and resolving that, versus like a PM on my team might focus explicitly on, what is a better user flow that we can do in this experience. Besides just me looking at it that jumps in once a day, they are living in that product. They are listening to those consumer, that qual and quantitative interviews, and looking at that data at a higher rate than I am, as I'm spread across the whole team, where I'm not necessarily focused just in one particular experience or end to end. Like I'm not just focused on web. I'm not just focused on mobile. I'm not just focused on push or, email campaigns. So I'm focused across the board.
Look, and this is a bit of a selfish question.
Yes.
You are so incredibly funny. And, we met, I think, during when you were working on Empire.
Yes.
And you have a really great mind for content. Jeremy actually wanted to know, are you still having any impact on content on your platform? Because a lot of us have the impression that product people don't have anything to do with content, so to speak. And I want to know for myself, are you creating content outside of Adobe? Because you're just too funny to sit there and the world not laugh at some of the ways that you have to say what you got to say.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And I feel like you have to laugh because product is hard. And
I don't even know why I just laughed. That's not even funny. It is hard.
Well, product, imagine someone telling you you're going to own this, but you actually don't own it. And you're going to go out there and figure it out. Or we've created something that only exists in a vision. And how do you go ahead and actually really build that? That's the part that is like, wow, this is funny. Hey, let me figure out. I've got two hands and a laptop. Let me go ahead and make this happen. So for me, it's always like, wow. But yes, I take pride in content because I came from that side of, the ecosystem. And then one thing that I noticed that, across the board, that if you're struggling for like engagement and, people coming to the platform or leaving, and, what is the content saying? And is the content also a fair representation? Is it inclusive? Like these are things that consumers are super keen and aware of now. So you can't just put it with a blanket statement. I do definitely challenge content. I don't have that type of domain and ownership, but I do challenge my team. Like, what are the content experiments that we can be running? How is the metadata set up? Can people easily find our content? Have we checked that, when someone searches for family, that we are being inclusive of all representations of family? These are things that are easy to fix, but if no one's thinking about it, then it will just continue to be something that's, that's someone else's problem. And yes, I do. Thank you, Juliana, for asking. I started an hashtag Ask Kasha Q&A kind of question TikTok.
Wait a minute. Nope, I'm coming back on the spotlight. We got what? Hashtag Ask Kasha.
Yes, because I do get, I love all the fanfare. I get a lot of DMs, and I'm at the point where I can't always answer. So my goal is, and I haven't officially kicked it off, but I did do a post about it. I get a lot of questions, and it is kind of hard, and there's so much more information out there than when I started. There's product school. I mean, there's so much, blogs and posts, women in product. There's so much resources, but there's also like, hey, I just kind of need like a 36 digestible, like, what do I do? I'm being asked to, create KPIs. Where do I start? What's the difference between KPIs and OKRs? Or what do I do when I'm constantly in conflict with a PM, or marketing's never on board? What do I do? And I want to be able to speak authentically to that, and also for people that may not feel comfortable because of imposter syndrome, because of cultural disparities, to be able to say, hey, this is what I did in this situation. There are so many ways that you can execute, that you can stand up for yourself, that you can be iconic. And still get the work done, still be technical, but also still kind of like we're training our users. How am I going to train the team that this is what works best for me? Or I actually didn't understand your question. Can you clarify for this? Or help me understand why we are kind of always in an impasse. I really want to work through this. It's not helpful for us to have this take place on Slack. Love to set up time so that we can unpack and move forward. So, and it took me time to get that, because I was in a place of fear of, people told me I didn't belong here, and that I didn't speak the way that they were used to hearing product at that time. So for me, I wanted to, as I started to grow, remove that fear, remove that, like, what is it that I'm super afraid of? Like, that they're going to laugh at me. Okay. They laughed. So what? That they're going to tell me no. Again, 2 little letters. That's it. What is it that I'm really afraid of? And what I was afraid of was that I thought that what they were saying was true. And that's the hardest part. Like, that's the hardest part. And no one's perfect in this role. I don't care if you've had 100 launches or 2 launches, you got to get back out there. You got to pick yourself up constantly. You do your own retro. What could I have done differently? You spend 5 or 10 minutes, you look at it, and then you move on. Because in our business, the best thing that you have are your relationships, communication, and speed, and being able to constantly iterate. I'm constantly iterating on stuff. I'm iterating on myself. So if I'm not in a place where I can handle that type of feedback and I can grow, and now, yes, there are microaggressions. Yes, there are things that are extremely unfair and obstacles are stacked against me, but I know that I'm meant to be here. I know that there are people like me who are using this product, and where is their voice? Who's kind of advocating for, like, hey, this, I know this kind of means this to you in copy, but this may be taken a very offensive direction to my cultural background, and being able to say that.
Man, I'm still stuck on, the philosophical quote, I'm iterating on myself.
Hashtag Ask Kasha. Okay.
Hashtag Ask Kasha.
I might give you a little soul journey, little product journey, okay, a little tech journey, all in the middle.
I'm just here to get my spiritual product life together and iterate on myself. That's what I'm here to do.
Is Ask Kasha, is that LinkedIn?
It is LinkedIn for now. I'm growing it. I'm a one-woman machine, and I got a lot of ideas, and because I'm fine arts, I want to make sure my logo and all that stuff. And sometimes I just need to shoot and edit and post. So please be patient with me.
Hashtag Ask Kasha. As long as on some of those you hashtag mentor mesh and consider us your home. We will be your core. We will be your core audience and your biggest cheerleaders.
Yeah.
Hey, for these last few minutes, I want
Yes.
everybody to come on camera. I want mics on. We need some noise. And I just feel like there was so much love here in this room today. Before Kasha even got here, but that much more when she did get here. So Kasha, as people come on camera and turn their mics on, can you close by talking about how you build influence?
Mhm.
Because one of the things that you pointed out when you were talking about the people that saw you
Mhm.
when you didn't even saw things in you when you didn't even see yourself in some of these places, we have a lot of those in this
Mhm.
community who don't see they know they want to be here, but they feel like they might not be ready.
Mhm.
And sometimes the people that are telling them they don't belong, you can have 20 people tell you that you're fantastic and you need to be here, and the one person that says you don't somehow
Yeah.
gets more of your energy.
Yeah.
So let's talk influence and ignoring the noise.
Yes. Influence, I would say the basis of my relationships, because sometimes I was just solving problems, like problems that weren't great, that weren't sexy, that didn't line up to a release. And it might have been something like a QA question, or was this bug ever fixed, or what happens after this drop off point in the experience. And it wasn't something that I was like, oh, why am I doing this? Let me just go and help this person. So once I started to kind of, like put those pieces together and then give out the information, like, hey, this is what I found, people started to come to me and they started to look to me like, oh, well, Kasha doesn't ignore my Slacks, or Kasha at least answers my emails. So I was building a reputation that I didn't even know was happening to me, because I know what it's like when you're reaching out and you need an answer and you're not sure and you're asking for clarification, or you think this person's the expert or that they'll know, and then you get nothing. Like, and everything goes silent. And that is common in our industry. It happens all the time. So I wanted to be unique. I wanted to give back and really like be able to know something. And then I started to see, well, what are the areas, like I could focus all day on the things I don't know, right? And that's not helpful. That's not positive. That's not going to get you to where you need to go. What is it that you do know? I know the day one experience, or I know what happens at checkout, and I'm going to study that inside and out. I'm going to make a manifesto. I'm going to have screenshots. I'm going to start to share this with people, because trust me, people that work on this product, we are focused so much on where we are as our starting point or what we own, we may not even know. So I started to kind of really like, oh, well, actually in sponsored content, this happens. You can't actually build this. And so that way I was able to, even though I had other people telling me like, oh, she didn't talk about hex values in the correct way, or I didn't talk about APIs at a sophisticated level. I was just like, well, it's sandwich making. You're bringing all these pieces together and you're putting it together, and that way it saves time. And you know who taught me that? A developer. So I started to kind of build my own encyclopedia, and I'm never going to say it's easy. I'm not going to give you one of these happy speeches. I'm not going to give you a Care Bear kind of antidote to take and like everything will work out. Just concentrate on your friends. No, you have to actively drive your career, and you have to actively drive the positive things that you are attributing to. Another way to kind of knock out the noise is keep a brag sheet, keep a swag sheet. Oh, someone told me I did great today. It goes in my little Google Doc. So those days that, someone's coming to me in a not so much respectful tone, or I'm feeling down, I have that to look on, that I know that I've come from places. And a lot of times when I see people get caught up in the swirl and the drama of what happened to them or comment, and it's because they're stuck at that place. And we have to be able to say, I allow myself to have this experience, but this does not define me. And that's what I kept telling myself. I told myself through the tears. I told myself when I had to roll back a release. I told myself that too when I had these great moments, because we want to think of the great moments of being attached to it, but you really have to love the work. I love being in product, but I know that that's not the only thing that I contribute to. So continue to focus on the things that you can influence and you can control, Everybody has a starting point. Nobody is an expert overnight, and allow yourself to develop to be great. I meet so many people that are straight out of college or pivoting from finance. I want to be, the next Simon Sesnick. And I'm like, great. Like, who doesn't? I mean, he's got like, I don't know, 2 million plus followers and keynote speaker, whatever. That took time, even probably for him. Now, maybe his was a shorter runway, longer, but you have to give yourself time to be great. And you have to have those mishaps, because how will you actually know what the best case scenario is if you've never experienced the worst? So I hope I answered everybody. You can always reach out to me on LinkedIn. It may take me a while, but I will get back to you, or I'll do a video. Maybe I'll screenshot you and get my TikTok editing on faster and then post in LinkedIn. But remember, I'm still growing in this, and I've been in this industry for over a decade. Had so many launches, platforms, different industries. It does get easier because you start getting more familiar. But then there's changes. There's always going to be something new. And don't you want to be part of something that is not only in the present, but also takes you through your future?
Yes, we do. Yes. I'm just going to speak for everybody and just be like, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Hey, how come you guys still got those your mics are still muted? Come on, we need to give this lady some applause.
Thank you.
Nobody's shy in here. No, you guys are clapping with your mics on. I can't hear it.
It's
Thank you, Kasha.
You're welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Amazing talk. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for taking the time. This was really, really nice. I think there's so many lessons that we can learn from this, but I think that all of us, this is one of the big reasons why I feel like community is very important, is because there's going to be dark times.
Yeah.
Even when you're successful, dark times every other week. But
we're certainly going to celebrate the good times. Okay. So
that's right.
We are.
And if there's anything we can do, like if you're trying to do more content creation, again, like we've got like 5,000 people in our community.
Okay.
We talk a lot about sharing content. So if anything we can do.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, I appreciate that. I will definitely, I'm going to take you up on that, Jay, because that, you can't do it alone. That's why you have teams and, in all different stages of your growth. So I'm definitely appreciative of that offer.
Consider us a riveted, cheering core audience for hashtag Ask Kasha and wherever else you go. Because I want to make sure everybody knows, before Jay established Mentor Mesh, we've had an entertainment, tech, and media community in and around Los Angeles. I believe I met Kasha at a mixer called Color Digital.
Yeah.
And that was one of the first digital networking organizations geared toward Black people, brown folks, you name it, white folks too. We love everybody, very inclusive. So people like me and Kasha have been showing up and looking for our tribes and supporting people before Mentor Mesh. And the fact that Mentor Mesh really made it official with Jay's perspective that you don't all have to look the same, have the same credentials. You are enough as yourself. That's why we became part of Jay's tribe, because we've been living that and seeing that and being part of some smaller communities here in the entertainment tech intersection. So to expand this on a global platform, or at least from here to Seattle, is an honor. It truly is. So thank you for everybody showing up today from the community. Thank you, Kasha Stewart, for making time for this community. I'm Juliana Jae Bolden from Blacktree TV and a few other places that you can check out on my LinkedIn. But a really, really big thank you to Jae Taylor for creating a space in which we could really speak our truth and help some people.
Yes, that's it.
All right. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. This was great. Thank you so much, Kasha.
All right.
Juliana.
Bye.
Thanks, everyone.